So the other night, I think it was actually last week, I was sitting outside. It was late, so I remember I'd finished work, I think at like 11. So it must have been like maybe just after 12. Anyway, I'm sitting out there, and then I'm like, one thing that I'm good with is like, I'm like, I know when there's something around. And I keep on looking to like my left and my right.
That's so funny. Sorry to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but we went to the most like abandoned area possible to practice on a shuttle run the other night because we had to measure out 20 meters and then we had to like loudly play the beep test like from my car speakers or whatever.
Yeah.
So we went to like the most isolated area, like way down in the pier, like somewhere where you're like, someone could dump a body here. And we're like in this parking lot and we're doing it. And then I just was like, someone is watching us.
You can tell, right?
Someone is watching us. And he was like, what? Really? And he's like, why you said that? And I was like, nah, I just know.
Yeah.
Someone is watching us do this right now.
First of all, female intuition is a very real thing.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Men, trust her when she's telling you something.
Yeah.
We're not just doing it for kicks. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there and I keep on looking. I keep looking. I'm like, no, I know there's something that's like, there's something. And I keep like looking around. Now I have a thing, I like to play Candy Crush on my phone. But I turn the brightness all the way down so that it doesn't really like mess with like, you know, being out at night versus looking at that bright screen. So I'm sitting there and as I'm like, I keep looking. And then I was like, is that a shadow or is that something? And then it's happened before where I think I see something, but it's my movement, right? So then I'm like sitting there, and then here's the thing. Now, I feel like it was not big enough to be a raccoon, but bigger than a skunk.
Oh.
So I'm like,
It's a
what?
very fine line.
I know, but and I know that sounds like, okay, it was probably like a young raccoon or
Yeah.
But the way that it was walking, I was like, huh. So I'm like, maybe it was a possum.
Oh, yeah, it could have been a possum.
Yeah, it could have been.
opossum.
An opossum, yes. But like I said, I know it sounds funny to say that because it's not like one's an elephant and one's a mouse.
Right.
But the sizing was there's just something different about the sizing. But it was dark, and then with a skunk, you'll see the white on it at some point. And they have that little like waddle.
Yeah.
And so it was like, long story short, I'm like, that doesn't walk like anything, but it does walk like something, obviously. And then I did see that it was walking slowly, and it went towards the racist neighbors. And I was sitting there, I'm like, I knew it. And then it's like, I sat there and I'm like, oh, because then I saw it again. And I'm like, you do real. So then what I tend to do is like, I'll stop my feet, or I'll make noise to like be like, hey, there's a human over here.
Right.
Just so that you know.
Don't get startled.
Right? I will be going inside momentarily.
Yeah.
Just finishing my business.
I'll be out of your fur in just a minute.
But then because of the fact that, and this is what made me nervous about it, because of the fact that it kept staying like in the shadowy part, and then along the side of the house is pure like shadowy parts, because that's where the light doesn't hit because the shadow from the house. So it was like coming down there at first, and then it walked like over across, and I saw it walking that way. But then I did see it come back, and I was just like, oh my gosh, please do not walk up here. Please, please, please don't. Because then it reminded me of that time that me and a squirrel, not a squirrel, I lied, it was a skunk. Me and a skunk came face to face.
Oh.
That was at the Strode house.
And you're like, this is your fault. This is your fault. I didn't do anything.
Yes. And I remember I was like, ooh, and I like clutched my boobs.
Pearls.
Yep. I was like, and it did that thing where it was like, and its butt was in the air.
Yeah, and you're like,
and then we literally, it was like a stare down, and we both, for like a good minute and a half, were just staring like this.
it's like literally someone has a gun drawn on you.
Yeah.
You're like, I can do nothing.
Yeah.
I have no defenses.
Like, we didn't know, like, who wants smoke? I certainly do not.
I don't want smoke.
I do not at all. I was out here just trying to relax after work.
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing.
Keep your butt juice to yourself.
I'm not even troubling you at all. And then eventually it kind of like broke its like little thing. I was like, all right, I didn't think so. And I walked away.
I read that, well, I found this out after John got sprayed by a skunk. I think he got sprayed 3 times in one summer.
Yeah, at one point you did tell me that he got sprayed a few times.
Yeah, they were like heavily spending time in my backyard. But I found out that they can spray only like one time, and then it takes them like a good week to replenish it.
I have heard that as well.
So like after he'd get sprayed, I'd be like, all right, I got to get a week of like not having to really worry too much about it.
Well, for that particular skunk,
Yeah.
but any others.
But then I think those times, all 3 of the times that he got sprayed that summer, it must have been by like smaller skunks because I kept seeing like small, like quite younger skunks because it was like not nearly as bad as it could have been.
Even that, yeah, I feel like the older ones don't really do it unless they absolutely have to. The younger ones, they're just like, I don't even know what's going on here. I'm shooting. Right now.
Yeah, it's like involuntary.
Yeah. Now, God forbid I had have been sprayed by that skunk.
Yeah.
How would I get the smell off? I'd probably just throw out my clothes. Actually, at the time I had on my winter coat, which would have been very annoying if I had to like throw that away or whatever. But how do you get out? I know the tomato juice thing. Is that a real thing or is that just...
The tomato juice might have some effect because of the like acidity of it or whatever. But from what I've gathered, the worst thing you can do is put water on it. That just like solidifies it into your skin or your clothes or your hair or whatever. So the first thing I do when John gets sprayed is I like keep him outside, obviously, and then I just like douse him in hydrogen peroxide. And that just like neutralizes it.
Okay.
And then I go in with like dish soap, like Dawn or whatever, and I'll just like do all his fur and then rinse that. And then I take him inside and up to the bath and I'll give him like a second bath and I've got like actual skunk shampoo up there.
Oh, okay.
But the hydrogen peroxide is key.
That's a good point.
No water. No water.
Because my first thing would be go jump in the shower.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
Then you're just like, it like sets it in. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird stuff.
I don't know what I would have done. I guess, yeah, I think naturally I probably would have taken off all my clothes, probably tied them up in a bag.
Yeah.
Because at that time it was still chilly, so I had on like pants and my t-shirt and a winter coat. So I feel like if it had have happened, it probably would have more so been my face.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, that like if you got it in the face, you would just get water immediately to get it out of your eyes and stuff. Yeah, because I've seen like I've had dogs and I can't remember. I had one cat got sprayed, but I've had many dogs that have gotten sprayed in the face by a skunk, and like their eyes, you can tell it's basically like pepper spray.
That's where glasses come in handy.
Oh, yeah. That is true. Yeah. That's true.
I just realized I am constantly protected.
Yeah, you've got your safety goggles on there.
And I like the bigger glasses too, so it's like there's a lot of surface area.
I could have used them actually the other day, because 2 times while I was working in the garden the other day, I was pulling these fucking vines that have like all rooted into the dirt. And so I'll like pull, and then there's like another root here, and I pull, and like some of them are real deep roots, so I like pull hard, and then I'm like pulling hard, and it just literally dirt just goes like boom into my eyes, like directly into my eye, and then I just like shut my eye, and I'm like fuck, and like there's like a bunch of dirt in there.
Yeah.
And so then right away I'm just like, okay, and then I'll like go into the house, like take off my shoes, go upstairs to the bathroom, like wash the outside of my eye with water,
gosh,
and then I get
annoying.
the Visine ready, and then right away I just go like like I just squeeze a bunch of Visine and like let it all go here, and then I take like a Q-tip and roll it in the corner of my eye, and it's just like all dirt.
There's nothing more uncomfortable than getting dirt in the eye.
Well,
specifically dirt, honestly.
Yeah, it's so like rough and
gritty.
Yeah.
Because an eyelash or something like that.
Or sand. Sand is really bad.
Sand also, I'm going to piggyback on that, I get in there.
Yeah, I always will go like get a Q-tip. And as we know, I like to
works.
But I do it with the Q-tip too.
Oh,
When I have
do
a
you?
Q-tip, yeah, I won't wet the Q-tip with water. I'll like put spit on it. I can run it through there. It works. I don't know what to tell anyone.
At some point, I'm going to have to try out this theory.
Yeah.
I got to confirm
You'll be hooked.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, welcome to Why They Do That.
I'm LaShonda. That's Sarah. Thanks for joining us today.
This is our podcast about putting spit in your eyes.
Well, listen, you're lucky we didn't talk about doo-doo and periods.
That's true. Yeah. We have gotten some feedback recently about how much we talk about pooping. And
Really? I didn't see that.
oh, didn't I tell you that?
No.
It was just for my mom. It was just my mom being like, I know a lot about LaShonda's bathroom habits now.
Oh, yeah, you did tell me that, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we do talk about that quite a fair amount.
I mean, it's a natural thing. Everybody poops. Read a book. So...
yeah, we're just trying to destigmatize pooping,
Right?
Mom. Let's get on board.
Hi, Julie. So what do you have for me today?
I have for you a horrifying story. It's horrifying.
Horrifying in what way?
In every way possible.
All right.
I'm keeping the whole like cannibal thing running,
boy.
but not at all in the same vein. It's a totally different type of cannibal story.
What is a different type of than what we?
And we'll find out. But it's like the thing that's so horrifying about this, it's like something that I've always found to be so scary, is that it could literally happen to anyone.
Guys, I have my hands on my hip. That's literally what
She's
she's
giving me a real
here.
sassy look right now. Okay, I'm telling you the story of Austin Harrouff.
I don't know that name, so we're in for a treat, folks.
Yeah.
Buckle in.
Like I said earlier, I think when I get to like the main part of it, you'll remember it from the news because it was all over the news at the time.
Okay.
And it's one of those like Florida man does this stories.
Of course.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, I don't know names, but the stories themselves will jog the old noggin.
Yeah, I think you will remember this because it only happened in 2016.
Okay.
So, Austin Harrouff, he was born December 21st, 1996 in Jupiter, Florida. Jupiter. Specifically, they lived in Palm Beach.
Okay.
Now, Palm Beach is the richest city in Florida, and it's like one of the richest cities in all of America.
I actually didn't know that.
I didn't know that either until I researched this.
I guess in my mind, the big old Miami, you know what I mean?
Oh, Miami isn't super rich, I don't think.
You know what?
I think people live outside of Miami. It's not Miami. I don't think it's a very nice place. I've been there.
I think
It's not a nice
What you're
place.
saying is right.
Yeah.
I guess in my head, I have like Will Smith's Miami video.
Yeah,
It's just
people
Miami.
come to Miami to party and then
Yeah.
they go back to their nice places.
That's true.
And then the people that live in Miami, don't come for me, but the people that live in Miami are pretty much just like club promoters, drug dealers,
Oh, yeah.
just that
All right, then.
type of people. So apparently there's an estimated 45 or so billionaires that live in Palm Beach.
Okay.
So it's a very affluent area of
say so.
Florida. Yeah. So his father, Wade, is a dentist, and his mother, Mina, is a pharmacist. So they're a very well-off family. He seemed to have a very uneventful childhood and life leading up to the event. So I didn't want to call his life normal. That's why I said uneventful, just because it seems like such a privileged life. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think you live a normal life if you're living around like all these billionaires and stuff.
Yeah.
But when he was 13, his parents did get divorced,
Oh, no.
which they did in like the least disruptive way possible. It didn't seem like it was bad. It seemed like an amicable situation. So they had their family home. So that's where the mother, Mina, and then Austin and the sister stayed. And then the dad just either bought or rented a place nearby.
Okay.
So they could just like come and go as they pleased. Like, and the kids were 13 and 12.
Okay.
So it's not like they were super young. They were
Yeah.
kind of doing their own thing. They all like live pretty close to the school. So it sounded like a pretty decent situation.
Yeah.
And then both the parents, not super fast, but like within a year of the divorce, they both start dating other people and have like boyfriend and girlfriend.
Probably were out of love for a while.
I would say so. And probably just were like waiting till the kids were old enough to do the thing. So in high school, Austin did really well. He got really good grades. He was in the top of his class. He excelled at athletics. And as a big guy, he was like 6'1", maybe 200 pounds. Maybe not in like the first year of high school, but as he grew up a little bit, he played football and wrestled.
Okay.
Which are both kind of like aggressive type of sports. And like his coaches said that they always encouraged him to like be more aggressive, but he just like wasn't like that. He just was like super laid back. He was like very friendly to everyone. All his friends and everybody he knew described him as being like kind and a little bit shy and just a cool, nice, relaxed guy. Okay. Nobody had anything bad to say about him.
All right.
So
I feel like those are kind of the creepiest ones in a sense. The ones that you're like, I would have never thought.
right.
I never had any inclination. There was no signs of sickery.
Right.
And then they just, boom, they just do something.
Well, that sort of like plays to the outcome of this, but we'll get there. So his dad even referred to him as like he had his little nickname for him, which was the happy boy.
Oh.
Yeah. It was just like a non-problematic child.
Okay.
So people said like his goal in life basically was to help people. And in particular, he wanted to find a career through which he could like help as many people as possible. And so he established that he felt that being a doctor would be a good way to do that. So when he was going to graduate high school in 2015, he had been accepted into Florida State for a pre-med program.
Okay.
At the end of that summer, so it would have been the end of summer 2015, his family packed up the car and they moved him out to Tallahassee, where Florida State University is. And he went and lived in the dorms there. Everything was good. He got into bodybuilding at the time. He had like a Instagram. He built himself like a little social media following. He had lots of friends. He was doing well in school. He was still doing sports and everything. But underneath all of that, he was like deeply insecure. And the thing that he was insecure about was that he felt like people didn't really like him.
All right.
And he had like a diary, and in the diary he would write about how he felt like he was very shy and that he needed to be more assertive, and that when he got to know people, then his true personality would come out and people could see the real him, but that he felt that he needed to like get past his insecurities and his shyness and stuff because people didn't like him as much as I guess he would like them to like him.
Okay.
And who knows? This could have purely been in his head.
Yeah.
Like it could have just been just for some reason one of those things. You know, where everyone else would be like, no, he's good. He's great. Everything's fine. So when he was in university that first year, he does start experimenting with different drugs like pretty regularly. And he's taking things like Vyvanse, which is an ADD medicine.
Okay.
So it's like a prescription drug. He's doing Molly, which is MDMA, obviously. He's trying acid. He's doing mushrooms. He's smoking weed. He's drinking alcohol. Like he's just kind of doing whatever he can get his hands on. And he's just like trying everything. And apparently he was doing like quite a bit of drugs.
Okay.
So the first year of university, as I've been indicating, really did a number on his mental health. I'm sure the drugs also contributed to that quite a bit.
Yeah, must have.
And by the end of that first year, he was really like teetering on the brink of like a mental breakdown.
You know, not every drug is for everybody.
No, and nobody really knew this either. No one knew what was going on because as far as anyone else knew, he's just like putting on a facade of like, everything is good, everything is fine, I'm great.
Okay.
He's not seeing his family. Tallahassee's like maybe 4-hour drive away from Palm Beach. So he's not seeing them regularly. So they're not around him to see this sort of like decline of his mental health happening.
Okay.
But later they go back and they look at his search history and they see around this time he starts searching things like, I think I'm going crazy, am I? How to know if you're going crazy? Must I sleep? What am I? What is white magic? And then he also searched things like auditory hallucinations while falling asleep. He searched for schizophrenia. He searched for what exactly is hell. And then he also searched for how to sell your soul to the devil.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So that's quite a bit to unpack.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's having this crisis, obviously, and he's trying to solve it himself by asking Google some very strange questions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So at the end of the school year, he goes back to his mom's house in Palm Beach for the summer, and right away his family notices something is like really off about him. Within a few days of moving back into the Palm Beach house, he moves his bed from the bedroom in the second floor of the house down into the garage, and he tells the family it's because there were so many demons in the house.
Okay.
So at nighttime, instead of sleeping, Austin would creep around the house and he would patrol for demons.
Okay.
So every 2 hours or so during his patrols, he would knock on his mom and sister's bedroom doors, and he would tell them he was guarding them from the demons. So his sister said during this time that Austin and I quote, made her uneasy because he was being a different person. And then she and the mother actually began locking their bedroom doors at night to prevent him from coming into their bedrooms.
Okay.
So I don't know if he was going into their bedrooms. Nothing said that he was, but I guess you just kind of, you're like, something's not right here. He's not sleeping. He's walking around. He says there's demons. He's knocking on our doors. Like, I too would be like, what if he comes and kills me? His family did ask him what was going on, and particularly if he was taking any drugs. And he did admit to them, like, everything about the drugs that he was taking. So they assumed that this was, like, the root of his strange behavior. And I guess, like, I don't know, it seemed like they didn't have a lot of experience with, like, mental health issues or drugs. So I guess it would be easy for you, if you didn't know the signs or anything like that, to be like, oh, well, this is obviously what happens to people when they do drugs. They're crazy. Like, they think there's demons everywhere and stuff. So he just has to get off the drugs and then he'll be fine. So he agrees to stop, like, using any recreational drugs at all.
Yeah.
And despite him stopping all drug and alcohol use, he still was suffering from these, like, strange delusions and behaving in a very out of character way.
Okay.
So his family was growing increasingly concerned about him, and they made the decision that they would push for a 72-hour psych hold. So in Florida, that's called the Baker Act. Here we call it Form 2, or being formed. So before they could actually get him put on a psych hold, stuff happens.
Oh, boy.
So August 15th, 2016, Austin goes to his friend's house. It's like his best friend.
Okay.
He doesn't expect him. He doesn't know he's coming. He opens the door. Austin's there. Austin says to him, "What year was I born?" And the friend is like, 1996. And then Austin just is like, like he doesn't say anything and he just walks away. And so the friend is like, this is weird. And he obviously knows he's been weird. Weird stuff has been going on. So he calls him. He's worried and he calls him on his cell phone and he's like, oh, come back. Like, let's hang out. What are you doing? So Austin comes back to the house. So they decide, okay, we're going to hang out today. They decide we're going to go to the beach. We're going to meet up with a friend group.
Sorry, did you say that they did, in fact, bring him to...
They didn't.
Okay.
So they had found out that was something that they could do, and that was their plan that they were going to do, like, within the next few days.
But they just hadn't done it yet?
No.
Okay.
It pretty much, like, this all sort of, like, happened in sort of a short period of time.
Okay.
So...
I'm, like, eagerly anticipating the ending of the story, because since you said that,
it's wild,
the
man.
wheels are turning.
It's so wild. It's wild. This is, like, probably one of the most wild stories I've ever heard.
See, you keep saying stuff like this.
Yeah.
Even from when you told me, when you figured out who you're going to do.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, just wait till I tell you. And I'm like, so tell me now.
And I know this one too. That's why I knew I could write it all in, like, a few hours if I just sat down and banged it out. I could get it done. So the two friends, Austin and his friend, they go and meet up with a group of friends, and that includes Austin's sister, who's only a year younger. Okay. So they all have, like, the same friend group. So they decide, okay, let's all go to the beach. Let's have a beach day. So they're walking to the beach. On the way to the beach, Austin is like, oh, I have to go home and I have to grab something. So they're like, sure, meet us down at the beach. So he goes, he gets changed at home, and he comes back and he meets them at the beach. And he's wearing, like, sweatpants and, like, a shirt with, like, a football jersey over top of it, and he's got like a couple of wristwatches on and some sunglasses, like, just a strange thing to go and do and then go to the beach. Like, it's not beach clothes.
Yeah, it's kooky.
Why the two watches? Like, there's just obviously crazy stuff going on in his head. So when he gets there, his friends start, like, cracking some jokes, just being like, why are you wearing all these clothes at the beach? Like, who goes home and puts on sweatpants? Like, why are you wearing two wristwatches? Like, you know, just, like, ribbing your friend kind of thing, like, in good fun.
Yeah.
Good-natured ribbing. So, out of character for him, but Austin loses his temper and he starts yelling at his friends, basically saying, like, if you tell me I'm crazy, I'm going to kill you. And so they're like, okay, calm down. Just relax.
Foreshadow.
Yeah. So his sister pulls him aside and she's, like, trying to calm him down. And she's like, you know, what's going on? What's wrong with you? Whatever. So he does calm down, but then he turns to her and he says, well, that he's half horse.
All right.
And also that he's immortal.
Okay.
So she's like, okay, you need to get some help, obviously.
Sorry, in my head, I'm literally like, listen, I didn't want to have to tell you this. I know you're my sister and I love you. I'm half horse, you know? And I am.
It wasn't even that he was
immortal.
like, he didn't even think, it seemed like he didn't think it was weird.
Yeah.
He was just sort of like stating the facts.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm half horse. Like,
Okay, so.
and later in the investigation, they discovered that in addition to all those other weird searches that he was doing, like the day before this all happened, he searched what's the weakest thing about centaurs, which a centaur is like the horse body
Yeah.
man upper body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then he also searched what's the biggest help to centaurs.
Okay.
Right?
I
Yeah.
mean, again, kooky.
Wacky.
Yeah.
So his sister's like, okay, you've been acting strange and you need to get help. And he agrees. He doesn't get upset with her or anything. He's like, I do need some help. Like there is something weird going on with me and I probably do need to get some help. So they leave the beach. It's like maybe 7-something p.m. that day. They've been at the beach all day.
Yeah.
So the sister, Austin, and the original friend that he went to his house that day, the three of them decide they're going to go down and meet the dad, Austin and his sister's dad, and the dad's girlfriend. And they're at a place called Duffy's, and they're going to have dinner. So the three of them are walking to Duffy's. It's not far from the beach. And he turns to the sister, and he says, I need to test out my immortality. And she's like, what?
Oh, boy.
Yeah. She's like, what now?
Pardon me?
So he just like turns and goes to like walk off the sidewalk, like into traffic. Just, I guess, to see, I guess he just assumed like if I get hit by a car, I'm going to be fine, but I got to
Yeah.
test it out to make sure it's going to work.
Well, naturally, how else would you know?
Right. So luckily she's able to like grab him before he like goes in front of any cars or anything, and she pulls him back to the sidewalk, and then her and the friend sort of like keep him away from the car side of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
And they get him to Duffy's and they get him into the restaurant, and then it seems like he's sort of like over that now.
Yeah.
So he's not talking about his immortality anymore or testing it out or anything. So there's them, there's the five of them. So now they're with the dad and the dad's girlfriend, and they get sat at the table, and almost immediately upon sitting down, he gets up. He acts like he's going to go to the bathroom, but then he heads out the front door of the restaurant.
That must be such like, oh my gosh, where is he going now?
They didn't seem to notice. So you can see there's like a footage, like a security footage inside the restaurant. They don't seem to notice. They're kind of in the back corner of the restaurant.
Oh, okay.
So he gets up, he goes to the direction of the bathroom, and then goes out the front door.
Okay. Yeah.
And then he comes back in the restaurant maybe like a few minutes later. And nobody notices that he's left anyway. And he goes back to the table and he sits down. And he's there for maybe 10 minutes. And then he gets up and he just walks straight out the door. This time he doesn't go to the bathroom. He goes straight out the front door.
Okay.
So I don't know if they noticed or not, but obviously he's been acting crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever. So he's out the front door and he walks to the mom's house, which is pretty close to the restaurant.
Okay.
So the mom hears him come into the house and go into the kitchen. And so she goes into the kitchen to see what's going on because she knows that they're all supposed to be down having dinner. And so she's like, oh, like, what's he doing here? She goes in and she finds him chugging cooking oil, like straight out of like a bottle of vegetable oil or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So she grabs it from him. She's like, what are you doing? Gets it away from him, takes away the cooking oil. And then I guess he had maybe like spilled some on himself. So she's like, go get changed. I'm going to take you back to the restaurant. Like, I'm sure they're wondering where you went. You're supposed to be having dinner with everybody.
Yeah.
So he gets changed. She drives him back to Duffy's and drops him off. And you see on the security camera that he comes back in. He's wearing completely different clothes now.
Nobody said anything.
He goes and he sits down. Now, you can't hear what they're saying, but he
Yeah.
goes and sits down at the table, and it seems like everyone's just kind of quiet. And then you see the dad turn to him and, like, say something that maybe it's, like, a little bit of a heated exchange between them. And then there's sort of, like, a little bit of an argument. And then he, like, reaches and, like, grabs the dad's face and kind of, like, pushes him back against his seat, sort of, like, back against the wall. They're sitting in sort of, like, a booth, like a corner booth.
Okay.
So he's more on the outside and his dad's more on the inside. And so he pushes his dad's face back and he's like holding him there. And he's a strong guy, obviously, and his dad's older than him, so he's overpowering him. And he does that for not long, maybe 30 seconds or something, and then he just like lets him go and he gets up and he walks straight out of the restaurant.
Okay.
So then you see the friend gets up quickly as well and walks after him, obviously concerned. Everyone's very worried about him.
Yeah.
Goes outside. Once he gets outside, he cannot see him anywhere. And he's like right behind him. You see like Austin goes, the friend goes, and already he's gone.
Okay.
So the friend comes back in and he's like, I don't know where he went. I just lost him. Like the second I went outside, he was gone. So the family's very worried. They're all worried. They decide we're going to call the police and we're going to report him missing.
Yeah.
So that's what they do. So once he leaves the restaurant, Austin just starts to run.
Okay.
And he runs into a nearby residential neighborhood where Michelle Mishkon and John Stevens live.
Okay.
So Michelle's 53, John's 59, and they're a couple that's been married for maybe like 20 years. And then they had like kids from previous marriages and stuff. So it's like their second marriage with each other. They live here. Michelle's sitting out in the garage, which they have, because it's in Florida, they've made their garage into sort of like an outdoor living room.
Okay.
And they like to just sit there with the garage door up. They have like couch, chairs, TV in there. They have all sorts of stuff. They just like to hang out in there, and, you know, they'll see people come by and they call them in, come have a drink, whatever. That's like their spot where they hang out. So when Austin got to Michelle and Stephen's house, Stephen was actually out somewhere in the neighborhood walking the dog at the time.
Okay.
So it was just Michelle sitting there in the garage. I think she was like watching TV or whatever. So Austin sees her in the garage and he like runs up the driveway, and apparently he's like opening and slamming her car doors.
Okay.
I don't know why, but that's just what the neighbor across the street said he saw, because he had gotten ready for bed. This guy, Jeff, he had gotten ready for bed, and then he heard this commotion. So he got up and he looked, and he saw this guy opening and slamming his neighbor's car doors. So by this time, Austin had removed most of his clothing and was obviously like a threat to Michelle.
Yeah.
So I think she confronts him, and then the neighbor across the street just hears like a blood-curdling scream. As I said, he's looking out the window and he's trying to like figure out what's going on. And when he hears the scream, he's like, all right, I'm going to go across, obviously, and I'm going to see what's going on, because this is my neighbor, Michelle, that I see every day, and why we hang out and we're friends and whatever. So he goes out and he's heading across the street to see what's happening. And as he's walking across, he sees Austin like grab Michelle and like throw her and slam her on the ground. And this lady's like 53 years old, I think. And Austin's like a 19-year-old, like 6-foot bodybuilding kid.
Yeah.
So when the neighbor sees that, he starts to run towards them to obviously help Michelle. And as he's running up, he sees Austin's like jumped on top of her and he's beating her.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Well, what appears to be beating her.
Yeah.
So as he gets up to them, Austin jumps up off Michelle and he turns towards Jeff, and he tells him that he doesn't want to get involved. Now, Jeff, being a pretty big guy also, and seeing that this is just his one female neighbor, like her husband John's nowhere around, and she obviously needs help, he decides he's going to take it into his own hands. So he lunges at Austin, and they sort of like fight for a minute before Jeff manages to like throw Austin to the ground.
Yeah.
And he goes kind of like face first into the driveway. Okay. And so Jeff thinks like, okay, that's gonna hurt. So he's gonna stay down kind of thing, or he's gonna get up slowly and go. Like, you know, I've given him a taste of his medicine or whatever. He's gonna leave now.
Yeah.
But then Austin starts getting up. And as Austin is getting back up off the ground, Jeff realizes that he is just pouring blood. There's blood just like pouring off him, and he doesn't really know where it's coming from. Yeah. But what had happened was Austin had a big knife in his hand that Jeff didn't see. So when he was on the ground beating Michelle, he was actually stabbing Michelle. And then when he came and he started fighting with Jeff, even though he only maybe hit him once or twice, he actually had stabbed him, and he had managed to make 5 stab wounds in him, which was like his head, his face, his upper back, his neck. So not knowing how badly he's wounded, Jeff, just knowing I'm pouring blood, the blood seems to be coming from my face and my neck, he decides the only way that either of us is going to survive this is if I get back to the house and I call 911 right now.
Yeah.
So Jeff just starts booking it back towards his house, and he gets in, he locks the door, he calls 911. While he's on the phone with 911, and he feels like he's going to pass out because he's just like losing so much blood, he can hear blood-curdling screams coming from across the street. And he said he could also hear what sounded like loud animal-like noises, like grunts and growls in between these blood-curdling screams. And he says, like later when he just talks about it, Jeff, he says he couldn't tell if it was like one person screaming or multiple people screaming. He just said he was like in such a daze. He was passing out. He's got the 911 person, and he just hears all this horrible screaming. So within minutes of calling 911, the police arrive to this nightmare scene. So the driveway is a literal river of blood. This is how the cop described it, the first one that got there.
Oh, boy.
At the top of the driveway, as they're moving up, obviously they have their guns drawn. There's a river of blood pouring down this driveway.
Yeah.
As they move up towards the top of the driveway, because there's two cars parked, so they can't see exactly what's going on, but they get in front of the car and they see on the ground is John, which is Michelle's husband.
Yeah.
And he's still alive, but he's on the ground, on his back. He's covered in blood, and Austin is on top of him, basically like bear hugging him, like sort of holding him down like wrestler style with one arm. And then with his other hand, he's pulling John's cheek. He's got his finger in John's mouth, and he's pulling his cheek out, and he's just taking bites. He's taking literal bites of John's face. Yeah.
Oh, I was not ready. I was not prepared.
Yeah.
I thought nothing that was going to even...
Yeah. So the police couldn't see exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
Because they're like kind of over top of it, and he's like over top of him. So they can just see he's like over his face and he's doing something to him. So like obviously he's the one that needs to be dealt with. And I think they even said that John kind of like looked up at them, and he said to them like, "Help me." Because he was still alive and pretty aware of what was going on. So there's two cops there right now. A female cop, she's got her gun out. The male cop decides, he says to her, "I'm going to tase him," because it's too risky to try to shoot, because he could shoot John as well. So he gets around the other side of him, and as he's about to tase him, he said then he could see exactly what was going on, like to his horror. And so he shoots his taser. It hits Austin. He's tasing him. Nothing happens.
I knew it.
Nothing at all happens, which is so terrifying when that happens. Like, imagine being a cop and tasing someone and it has no effect. And you're just like, oh my God, this isn't even a human being.
So I was telling you personally, I know there's a lot of spiritual stuff that goes on. This is the whole spiritual story. It is, I'm telling you.
So the taser has no effect on Austin, and he just continues to take bites out of John's face. Yeah. And it was like face. Some people said face and chest. Some people just said face.
You know what? On the weekend, me and Christopher were horsing around, and he like bit me, but he bit me a little too hard.
It hurts.
And I got annoyed. I'm like, oh, that actually hurts. And you know, I got like girl mad.
Yeah. And it hurts like for a while after. Like it hurts more and more.
So you saying that is like, and then
your face is so sensitive.
The funny thing is I bit him back, but like obviously you're not biting chunks out, but like
we like want at you like bite like harder than you should.
A little bit.
Yeah. And you know it's gonna hurt them.
And I just can't imagine like doing it to actually tear away like flesh. And then on top of that, to like be the one receiving that, because like I said, I actually like it hurt more than I think he realized. Let alone, but I'm still intact, you know?
I know. The biting in the stories, like there were some parts of, I don't know if you know too much about Ted Bundy, but he literally like bit some nipples off.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not in the forefront of my brain, but I did.
Horrendous.
Watch the movie of Ted Bundy.
So the officer decides, okay, I can't shoot him, and the taser's not working. So he decides he's just going to try kicking Austin. So he winds up and he like soccer kicks Austin in his face, and it sort of like knocks him back momentarily. And it's like, it's as if nobody else is there. Austin doesn't even acknowledge the police officers or that he's been kicked in the face. He just immediately like pounces back on top of John and continues biting and ripping.
Oh, gosh.
And the police I didn't write this in my notes, but I remember reading a part where the police said that they could hear the sound of like tearing flesh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I know. I think you would have to like retire from your job after this.
Honestly, why do you bounce back after that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, my goodness.
It would be like a constant nightmare. Like every time you close your eyes, you would see it.
Oh, the tearing.
Yeah. Yeah. So the officer repeatedly just continues kicking Austin in his face and
If
his
he got
head.
that close, why didn't you shoot him?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of rules around cop stuff.
I'm sorry. This is why I am not a cop, but God, Lord Jesus, please forbid I'm ever in that situation. If I can get close enough to kick you, I'm just going to shoot you. I'm going to see what you're doing. At this point, you're getting shot.
The thing about that is that because his face is like right on top of John's face, he can't just shoot him from any distance. He would have to literally put a gun like to
That's
his
my
head.
point. I wouldn't do it to the head, but I'd do a body shot. Like, I'd get close enough that I'm going to do a body shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The risk is that you get that close, then the guy gets the gun from you. Then you're dead. Then that guy's dead. Then everyone's dead.
If I shoot you and you're getting up, I am fully aware that you're just a demon.
Yeah. Well, either way, like police have a procedure to follow.
And I know.
So they go by the book to keep everyone as safe as possible.
Mind you, I'm just talking nonsensically.
Yeah.
But if you can hear tearing, you're kicking him, you're tasing him, nothing's doing anything. At that point, I think you would actually be justified if you can get a clear shot.
Right.
Realistically, me not being funny. If you can get a clear shot at that point, I think that's kind of the only option.
Oh, they were justified. They would have been justified for sure to shoot him, absolutely.
Yeah.
But both of the cops that were there at the time obviously felt that they weren't able to get a clear shot.
Yeah.
Plus, this would be the most insane thing you would ever seen in your life.
Agreed.
And he's like making like animal noises and stuff too. You would just be like, what the fuck? The fact that the cop even had the sense to keep kicking him and keep going at him and trying to get him off, kudos to him.
Yeah.
So another group of officers shows up, cars roll up. This one has a canine unit.
Okay.
So the dog is released and the dog goes and latches onto his arm, the arm that he is using to like pull on his face.
Yes.
So the dog rips his arm back.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's got a good bite into his arm.
Yeah.
And Austin, as if it's not happening at all, rips his arm out of the dog's mouth, like shredding his own flesh from the dog's teeth, and goes right back to biting John. So the dog bites again, same arm, rips his arm back. Austin again rips his arm, shredding his muscles, shredding his flesh. No awareness of pain or the blood or being kicked or any of it.
Yeah.
All he cares about is just eating John's face, basically.
I wish you hadn't said that.
Well, that's what he was doing. And it wasn't like the police said, it wasn't just that he had like bite marks, like there was flesh gone. It was gone. So the dog again gets a hold of Austin's same arm, and as he pulls it back, and he pulls Austin's body up a little bit, the cop that's been the soccer cop, let's call him, he times it perfectly so that as the dog pulls Austin up, he like winds up and boots him hard, like right into his face.
Okay.
And so it sends Austin flying back and onto his back. So he's on the ground on his back. And at that point, the cop just like pounces, like jumps over top of John's body and onto Austin and lands on Austin's head and like slams it into the driveway.
Yeah.
And it leaves him like a little bit dazed, thank God.
Yeah.
And in that moment, the cop manages to slap a handcuff on one of his wrists.
Okay.
And Austin is trying to get up. He's trying to like get going again.
Yeah.
And so the cop just like takes the handcuff that he's got in his hand with the other one on his wrist, and he starts to just drag him away from John's body so that he can't get back to John. So then it takes maybe 3 or more of the cops to wrestle with him so that they could get both of his hands close enough that they could put the other cuff on the other hand. But they did manage to do that. And so they have him like at least somewhat subdued on the ground. And then they're able to check Michelle and they're able to check John. Michelle has unfortunately passed away of her injuries. She had been bludgeoned by his fists. She had been stabbed by his knife. And then at some point in the garage, he also found a machete that had belonged to the couple. And he had stabbed them both with the machete as well.
Oh, gosh.
So she has passed away of her injuries already. And then they go and they check John. And despite him being alive for a period of time from this, he does succumb to his injuries. So Austin, handcuffed, covered in blood, lying on the driveway. He at this time becomes unresponsive as well, so they rush him to the hospital.
Yes.
At the hospital, the doctors established that at some point during this whole attack, Austin had drank a lot of what turned out to be like a liquid chemical fertilizer.
That he probably found in the garage, right?
That was in the garage. Okay. So he had horrible chemical burns in his mouth, in his esophagus, his stomach, and then he was basically in like multiple organ failure because he had poisoned himself so badly.
See, but somebody that has all of that going on should not be so strong to be tased, bitten, all that, and it have no effect. You should be on the ground convulsing pretty much.
Right.
Based off of everything that has transpired. This is why I say not everything is worldly.
So at this point, he goes into a coma.
Okay.
And he's in a coma for the next 11 days. But then he does come out of the coma. They didn't know if he was going to survive it, but he does come back out of the coma. And he does make like a full physical recovery from this. Now, the doctors obviously are like, this is fucked. And so they run like a tox screen on him because they're expecting he's going to have like
drugs
bath salts or flocka. And this is what I was saying that you would probably remember this time, because this is the time when bath salts and flocka became really popular.
I don't remember flocka, but I remember bath salts and people were eating people's faces and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I do remember that.
Yeah. So that happened in Florida as well. I remember that one
Florida, we got to have a talk.
That poor guy. I remember that. Do you remember that video? It was like shot from a helicopter. And you could see the guy like eating the guy's face.
I remember, I don't literally remember, but I do remember like I did see it and everything at that time. And I do remember that it was like people were talking about, oh, it's like zombies and da-da-da. People are eating people and it's a bath salt epidemic. You know, my stupid self back then thought literally it was like, you know, I like to take baths.
Yeah. I know. That I thought that too at the beginning. But I was like, it can't be just bath salt.
Like what? Like this something, it's supposed to just be salt.
What's that? Epsom salt?
Yeah, with like a little bit of
a little oil in it.
Yeah. So what's going on here?
Yeah, they call
and
that.
Who concocted this business?
Well, I'll tell you about it. I did actually read it about.
Oh, good.
Okay, so I looked up like what flocka was, just because I was like, I've heard of it many times, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
There's in certain parts of Africa, there's a plant that they take and they like sniff it or eat it or whatever. And it's like a stimulant.
Yeah.
And everyone's addicted to it there.
I have heard of that.
And that is caffeine.
Okay.
And so this is like a synthetic one. Like, you know how people make synthetic marijuana?
Yeah.
So this is like a synthesized version of that. And it's also called alpha PVP. And the PVP stood for a word that I could not possibly pronounce. So I wanted to read you the side effects of flocka.
All right. I'm sure it's quite extensive.
I'm not going to read you all of them, but I'll just read you some of them. And so this thing says the following 10 facts have been identified in flocka users. And it's like people who have done it, and then also doctors and stuff who have like seen these patients. This is what they said is like pretty common things that happen to people.
Okay.
So it makes people move like zombies, jerking and contorting in an unnerving and inhuman way. When someone takes too much flocka, the muscle fibers in their body start to dissolve into the bloodstream. Their bodies start to move uncontrollably. Sometimes their heads will drop down below their shoulders. Other times, their limbs will stiffen and shoot out. It's like watching a marionette dance as its strings are cut, or perhaps a glitch in a video game. Flocka activates the fight or flight response in a person's brain, often turning them irrationally violent. At the same time, it causes paranoid delusions and fantasies, meaning their brains just come up with reasons to start fighting.
Okay.
It rewires the brain chemistry. They have no control over their thoughts. They can't control their actions, and it seems to be universal that they think someone is chasing them.
Interesting.
It can stop the sensation of pain. People overdosing on Flocka aren't just violent, but they're completely fearless. Flocka gives users super strength, and it can make users suicidal.
Oh.
So it's pretty much all like the worst
Yes.
things that you could give someone. But yeah, they also call it like the zombie drug or whatever.
You know what weirds out my brain? If, like, for example, you take a person, right? Now, their muscles are going to be what they are. With their, like, you're only capable of so much strength. So when things happen like that, and then they say a person has super strength, I'm always like, but where did the extra strength come from?
Right.
You're only capable of 70%, like, just as an example. You know what I mean? So where's the additional 27% that they just got?
Right.
How are they using their muscles now to be stronger in that moment or under that influence?
I guess it's like they always talk about how, like if you are put under anesthesia, you're like completely flexible. Like you could do the splits. Like if they wanted to manipulate you into the splits and stuff, you can do it. But the reason you can't do it when you're awake and conscious is because your nervous system will tell you it hurts.
And then you'll stop.
To prevent you from like doing any damage to your muscles or your tendons or anything. So you are actually that flexible, but your body's like, we might not be this flexible, so let's not push it past this point.
Okay.
So maybe it's like the kind of thing where you have the capability, but your body's like, let's just keep it within this range. But then there's also the thing where people like, you know, where a mother can lift a car off her child because the adrenaline's just like surging so hard. So
it's interesting when you look at like the specs of all these things, because I've heard a lot of cases, like good cases, not face-eating ones, where people do superhuman things to save somebody or to save a child or whatever. And it's interesting because you're like, where did that come from? Personally, I just call angels out of heaven.
well, then it's like, I wonder if that person could do that again. You know what I mean? Like, so anyway, there's no drugs in his system.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it.
The only thing that's in his system is like a very small amount of THC.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little bit of marijuana.
Yeah, tiny bit, but like a negligible amount. So once he makes like a full physical recovery from this, the doctors were asking him why he did what he did. He told them that when he left the restaurant, so remember, rewind, when he's left the restaurant the third time after getting in like the fight with the dad, he said he went outside and he saw a figure, which I guess he figured was like a demon. He said it was like a dark, like black-bodied figure with a white face. And he just like knew it was after him kind of thing, like it was a demon or something. And so he just started to run. And he ran, I think it was about 4 miles, it said, from the restaurant to where Michelle's house was. And he just like ran that whole way. And then when he said he got into the neighborhood and it was all kind of dark because now it's like maybe 8 or 9 something at night. And he said he saw this like brightly lit garage. And so in his brain, he was like, oh, I have to go there. And then those people will help me to fight and defeat this demon that's after me. And he was like, I don't know where it is kind of thing, but I know it's after me. And so he said when he walked up Michelle's driveway, he probably was like, you know, spouting gibberish, but to him, he's saying like, there's a demon and you have to help me defeat it or whatever. But he's spouting gibberish. He's naked. He's almost completely naked. He is like, obviously seems insane and scares the shit out of her. And he said when Michelle screamed in fear at him, in his mind, he thought she was a witch and he needed to kill her.
Okay.
So then that's when he attacked her with his knife. And then when she was subdued on the ground, I don't know if she was dead at this point or if she was just bleeding on the ground or unconscious, I'm not sure. But he said he got up and he drank a bottle of alcohol, which actually turned out to be this like chemical fertilizer that they had in their garage.
Yeah.
And then he said he turned to look out of the garage and he saw another like dark figure there with a dog, which likely was John returning from walking the dog. And then after that, his mind goes blank and he remembers nothing until he wakes up in the hospital like almost 2 weeks later.
Interesting.
Yeah. He had no recollection of the neighbor, Jeff, at all. Mm-hmm. He had no recollection of eating or biting anyone. He had no recollection of the police ever being there. Mm-hmm. So obviously, they have to establish whether or not this person was insane or sane during this whole frenzied situation. So they have this world-renowned doctor or psychologist, psychiatrist. His name's Dr. Philip Resnick. And so he does like an in-depth analysis of Austin, and he provides a 38-page written report that states, in his professional opinion, that Austin was having a psychotic episode at the time. Mm-hmm. He diagnosed him with having clinical lycanthropy delusions.
All right.
So that's basically where someone believes they're not a human being. Mm-hmm. And so, like the growling, the eating of the face, he had told his friends that he was half dog, half man.
Centaur and all
had
that.
told his sister, that he was half horse, a centaur, like all this kind of stuff. So the doctor establishes, like, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. And so when it does get into the hands of like the prosecutors and everything, they decide they're going to charge him with 2 counts of first-degree murder, obviously. But when they get in front of the judge for the first appearance, I guess it is, he pleads not guilty by reason of insanity. Obviously, he has a good lawyer because his parents have money. So he pleads not guilty by reason of insanity. And the judge in this case does accept a plea deal for him. Okay. And so he allows for Austin to be sent to a mental health facility instead of like going through the trial and everything. Because not only was it Dr. Resnick that analyzed him, 2 other psychologists analyzed him. And Dr. Resnick and the other one said he was insane at the time and that it was like a psychological breakdown or like a psychotic episode or whatever. And then the third one seemed to disagree. But when it came to the time for that one to testify in front of the judge, he like had other work obligations that he needed to attend to or whatever. So he didn't attend the court hearing. And so the judge didn't hear his opinion on it.
So are they trying to say that at that time he was and now he's normal again? Or?
They're saying that he generally is sane and a normal person, but he had a psychotic episode because he has this lycanthropy delusions.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's formally also diagnosed with bipolar type 1 with psychotic features, and they sent him to the Florida State Hospital where he's currently being treated for his conditions.
All right. Well, again, that's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. But it really reminded me, I was like going back and forth between doing this one and Vince Lee.
Who's Vince Lee?
Vince Lee is like the Canadian version of this.
Oh, super, super.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the one we talked about with the bus?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good story, not good story. I'm a little upset with you because it is 6:24. I had planned to go eat dinner after this.
Oh. Well, at least you don't have to go right to bed.
That's true, too. And sleep alone.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess there's the silver lining.
We were just talking about you wanting to sit out in your driveway, too.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Honestly, like, when he's here, I can go out there and be just fine. Mm-hmm. And I know he super listens out for me, too. But when he's not here and I have to fight for my virginity on my own, I'm very much more alert, obviously.
Right.
You know what did it? When you said that you could hear the tearing of the flesh. I'm sorry.
I know. That did it for me, too.
I'm trying to get it out of my head. I'm trying to be like, okay. I was even like, oh, I'm going to walk you outside because I'm probably going to sit outside for a second. And now I'm like, oh, Sarah's on your own.
Bye, bitch.
Ask Joe.
Yeah, no, that's why I wanted to do this episode, too, because me and Ahmed were talking about it, too, earlier, where we were talking about how, like, some people are just, like, evil. Like, they're just pure fucking evil, and they're awful, and they're, like, calculated and they're very like aware of what they're doing and they're getting like enjoyment out of it and stuff. And then someone like this, it's just like, I don't want to say that, you know, okay, I was going to say everyone is a victim in this situation. Obviously, he murdered these people. He's killed these people. He's taken their lives. He's ruined the lives of their family members, their loved ones, their friends, their neighbor, everyone that lives in that neighborhood, the police officers. Like, this has destroyed a lot of things for a lot of people. But he obviously didn't want to do this. He didn't do this on purpose. And then when he does get out of the coma and they're about to transfer him from the hospital to like jail where he's going to be processed and stuff, he actually does like a Zoom interview with Dr. Phil. And it's like a 10-minute interview. And, you know, Dr. Phil asks him, obviously, a bunch of questions.
Dr. Phil's not a real doctor, is he? I don't believe he is.
He's not a real doctor.
He just was on Oprah for so long. And I think that's how people just really
It's just his like
him.
moniker.
Yeah, I think that's what he was. I think he was
He's
a
really just Phil
specialist.
McGraw.
Yeah. And then he got like the nickname Dr. Phil.
Right.
And then it progressed from there.
Yeah.
Because realistically, when you look at his interviews and stuff like that, he's not actually doing like a session, like a therapy session. He's just like asking questions. And then he gets rude with people because that gets a rise out of the audience, which gets him views.
I really liked that one where he had the guy that made Ashley Madison on. Do you remember that?
I didn't see that.
Fuck, that was hilarious. So it's the guy that made that website, Ashley Madison, which is specifically just to cheat on your spouse.
Yeah.
And the guy dressed as Dr. Phil. So he put like a bald cap on with the hair on the side. He did the fake mustache. He wore like the same type of suit Dr. Phil wears.
Yeah.
He comes on. Dr. Phil's obviously not expecting this. And they start talking. And he's basically like attacking him, obviously, being like, oh, you're just cashing in, taking advantage of people in their worst situations, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, you're just cashing in on people's shitty situations and taking advantage of them and making money off them. Like he just like says like, you're doing the exact same thing as me, basically. Yeah. You're not helping anyone.
Oh my gosh.
So that's another cannibal story for you.
Thanks so much.
We had, who would we have? We had Carl Denk, he was a cannibal. And then we had Joe Metheny.
Yeah.
Metheny, he was a cannibal. And then we took a slight deviation into the horror of Rosemary and Fred West. Thanks so much for that.
It took me a little bit to get over that story, honestly.
Well, like, I have to go edit it right now.
Oh, I don't envy you.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that one. And now we're over here with another cannibal story. Slightly different.
A little different, but worse.
Oh, you know what? Actually, one thing I didn't say. When the cops had like handcuffed him, he like looked up at one of the cops and he was like, shoot me, kill me or whatever. And he said, kill me because I'm eating humans. And before where they were like taking him, I guess before he was unconscious and they were taking him to the hospital, he said, apparently one of the cops said that he said, I think I ate something bad.
Okay.
And the cop said, what did you eat? And he said, humans.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have to really take this out of the old noggin.
Yeah. And then later his dad was doing an interview and he was saying that all the like growling and like animal like noises he was making was because of how severely he had burned his like esophagus and all his windpipe and stuff.
That honestly, geez Louise.
Yeah.
That is something. That really is something.
The photos are fucked up. Like,
oh, I'm not looking forward to that.
You don't
Instagram
see the
post.
photos of the victims, but just to see him, like how so out of it he is, and he's like so covered in blood and stuff, it's like really, really messed up.
Even if you notice, I didn't actually say that he's going to Carnage Island because I wouldn't put him on Carnage Island.
No, I wouldn't put him on Carnage Island either. I actually feel bad for him. I do feel bad for him. I told this story to Ahmed, and he was like, could that happen to me? And I was like, no, I think you're statistically a little too old for this to just suddenly happen to you.
It was a good story. It kept me at the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
It's a good story, but it's not a good story.
Yeah, I know. It is nightmare worthy.
You know, we should probably put this at the beginning, but if you're listening to this and it's past 9 p.m., turn it off. Wait till tomorrow.
Sorry, we told you at the end.
I mean, you know.
But anyway, I hope you actually did enjoy that. Thanks for coming. We're going to have a whole fresh news story for you next week.
Yes.
Who knows what it's going to be?
I actually don't, because the one that I was going to record, I wanted that one to be kept.
Oh.
And I wasn't going to...
Oh, okay. So no one knows what it's going to be. But we have less
who
than a week
knows?
to decide
Because
and write it.
See what you did there.
Get ready. No pressure or anything.
I mean, guys, I am the one that's usually, can we do this tomorrow? Like, no, you know how you know it's happening? When Sarah gets a message and I know she opens it up and I know she shakes her head when she sees it because it's going to be like either a voice note or me being like, what's your schedule this week?
Yeah.
I'm off on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Or it'll literally be like, I've done 5 pages. And they'd be like, I've done 5 pages. I maybe have another 3. And then my good copy. And I'm like, you fucker. No way this is getting done. I literally I started writing this at like 8 o'clock this morning and just like banged it out in like 4 hours maybe. And then I was like, no, Sarah, you're doing it.
And you came through.
You're going to do it and get it.
And 14 pages, that's good.
Yeah.
That is good.
That was a lot of writing today. It's a crampy hand.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for coming. Bye.